The silence in our house had a new quality to it, a thick, almost tangible weight that seemed to press down on the furniture and choke the usual, comforting hum of the refrigerator. It was the first night our parents were gone since the shift. Mom and Dad had taken a long weekend to celebrate their anniversary, a trip to a cozy bed and breakfast that felt, to me, like a desperate attempt to rediscover a spark that everyone could see was flickering. The air between them had been tense for months, a low-grade electrical hum of unspoken grievances and polite dismissals. Their absence didn't bring relief. It just made the space their unease occupied feel larger and more empty. I was 18, a high school senior named Chloe, perched on the precipice of a future I was desperate to launch myself into. My brother, Kyle, was 22. Back home after a messy breakup with his college girlfriend and what I suspected was a stalled-out job search. He'd retreated into a shell of quiet resentment, his presence in the house like a ghost haunting his own life. We'd been close once, as kids, partners in crime building pillow forts and conspiring against early bedtimes. Now, we were two satellites in the same quiet orbit, passing each other in the hallway with a nod. Our conversations reduced to logistical questions about dinner or whose turn it was to take out the trash. That night, a Friday, we'd ordered a pizza and eaten it in front of the TV, the glow of some forgettable superhero movie illuminating our faces without warming the space between us. The credits rolled, casting the room into a sudden, profound darkness before Kyle found the remote and clicked the TV off. "Well," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "That was a thing that happened. It had explosions." I offered a weak attempt at our old easy banter. "Sure did." The silence descended again, heavier than before. I could hear the old grandfather clock in the hallway ticking away the seconds, each one a tiny hammer blow against the quiet. I looked at Kyle. He was slumped in Dad's recliner, staring at the black screen of the television as if it might hold the answers to questions he hadn't even asked aloud. He looked older than 22. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. A reckless, crazy idea began to form in the back of my mind. It was born from this crushing silence, from the memory of our parents' strained goodbyes, from the sheer, desperate need to feel something other than this pervasive dread. It was a key, and I decided, in a moment of pure, unadulterated impulse, to turn it. "Hey, Kyle," I said, my voice sounding small in the large, dark room. "What if we did something weird?" He turned his head slowly, his expression unreadable in the dim light from the kitchen. "Weird how? Like, put all the furniture on the ceiling? Because I'm not sure I have the energy for that, Chloe." "No, not that." I took a deep breath, my heart starting to thump a nervous rhythm against my ribs. What if we looked through Mom's phone?" The question hung in the air, a toxic cloud. Kyle didn't move for a long moment. Then, he slowly sat up straight, the recliner groaning in protest. "What? Why would you even suggest that?" His tone wasn't angry, not yet. It was shocked, laced with a confusion that mirrored my own inner turmoil. I was already regretting it, but the momentum was carrying me forward. The need to know, to shatter the fragile illusion of our family's stability, now outweighing the fear. "I don't know," I said, which was a lie. "Haven't you felt it? The way they are with each other? It's like they're roommates who secretly hate each other's music. Mom is always on her phone, and she gets this look, and she always angles the screen away when anyone walks by." "That doesn't mean anything," Kyle said, but his voice lacked conviction. He'd seen it too. We all had. The secretive smiles, the way she'd suddenly leave the room to take a call, the new password on her phone that none of us knew. "Doesn't it?" I pressed, the recklessness taking full hold. "They're gone. Her phone is probably in her bedroom. We could just look, see if there's anything. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe it's nothing, and we can stop worrying for nothing." "That's a huge invasion of privacy, Chloe," Kyle said, but he was already standing up. The moral objection was there, but it was weak, a flimsy fence around a curiosity as vast as my own. The silence in the house was a vacuum, and we were both being pulled into it. "I know," I whispered, "but don't you want to know what's happening to our family?" That was the question that did it, the one that transcended right and wrong. He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the same fractured reflection of our home life that I felt in my own soul. He gave a single, sharp nod. The walk down the hallway to our parents' bedroom felt like a march to the gallows. The house was too quiet, the only sound the frantic beating of my own heart in my ears. The door to their room was ajar. I pushed it open, and the smell of my dad's cologne and my mom's perfume hit me. A familiar scent that now felt like a relic from a lost era. Her phone was on her nightstand, next to a book and a half-empty glass of water. It looked so innocent, a sleek black rectangle that held the potential to detonate our entire world. Kyle picked it up. It lit up, demanding a passcode. "Now what, genius?" he asked, his voice tight. Try our birthdays, I said. She used to use those. He tried his. Nothing. He tried mine. The screen shook. Incorrect. Think. Chloe. What else would she use? I racked my brain, thinking of the things that were important to her. And then it hit me. Try the date she and Dad got married. She's always been sentimental about that. Kyle's thumbs moved over the screen. He paused, then let out a soft, disbelieving breath. The lock screen dissolved, revealing her home screen. A picture of Kyle and me from years ago, smiling on a beach, our arms around each other. The irony was a physical pain. He opened her messages. My stomach was a tight knot. We scrolled through threads with her friends, with her sister, with Dad. Normal, mundane stuff. Grocery lists, plans, the occasional meme. We were about to give up, the shame starting to curdle in my stomach, when Kyle's scrolling finger stopped. There was a thread with a name we didn't recognize. Mark. The last message was from just a few hours ago. Can't stop thinking about last weekend. Counting the minutes until Tuesday. Kyle's face was pale in the glow of the phone. He didn't look at me. His thumb, trembling slightly, tapped the thread, and we started to scroll up. What we saw there, in that private digital space, unraveled the last 20 years of our lives in the span of 5 minutes. It wasn't just flirting. It was explicit, intimate, and devastatingly emotional. There were plans for a future. There were photos, not explicit, but intimate enough, of this Mark and of my mom. Pictures I never, ever wanted to see. There were complaints about my dad, about his lack of ambition, his quietness, his inability to see her. There were declarations of love. They'd been seeing each other for over 8 months. The world tilted on its axis. The room, the house, the very ground beneath my feet felt unstable. I thought I might be sick. I looked at Kyle. He had sunk onto the edge of the bed, the phone dangling from his hand as if it were a poisonous snake. His face was a mask of utter devastation. "Oh, God," he whispered. The sound ripped from somewhere deep inside him. I took the phone from his limp grasp and placed it back on the nightstand, exactly as we'd found it. It felt like handling evidence from a crime scene. We walked out of the room, back down the hallway, and into the living room. But we were different people now. The silence was no longer just empty. It was accusatory, filled with the ghost of the truth we had just uncovered. Kyle collapsed back into the recliner, running his hands over his face. "I can't believe it," he muttered, his voice thick. "I mean, I can, but I can't. Mom, how could she?" I sat on the couch, pulling my knees up to my chest, trying to make myself small. The initial shock was giving way to a cold, sharp anger. "All those fights with Dad," I said, my voice trembling. "All those times she made him out to be the bad guy for being withdrawn. She was the one checked out. She was the one living a double life." We sat in the wreckage for what felt like an hour, the truth settling over us like ash. We dissected every recent memory, every odd behavior, and now it all made a horrible, perfect sense. The book club that met on Tuesday nights, the work conferences that were suddenly so frequent, the new clothes, the renewed interest in her appearance. It wasn't for Dad. It was for Mark. "What do we do?" I finally asked, the question hanging in the toxic air. Kyle looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed and lost. "I don't know, Chloe. Do we tell Dad? Do we confront her? Do we just pretend we don't know?" The weight of the secret was immense, a boulder on both our chests. We were no longer just siblings. We were co-conspirators and fellow victims, bound together by this terrible knowledge. "We can't pretend," I said, the anger giving me a strange cold strength. "We can't just sit on this. It's a lie. Our whole life is a lie. But if we tell Dad, it blows everything up," Kyle argued, his voice rising in pitch. "The divorce, the fighting, splitting up holidays. God, Chloe, it'll be a war. It's already a war." I shot back, standing up. "She's the one who declared it. She's the one who betrayed all of us, not just Dad. She lied to us, Kyle. Every time she kissed us goodbye to go see him, it was a lie." The argument that followed was one of the most intense of our lives. It was fueled by betrayal, fear, and a profound sense of loss. We were grieving for the family we thought we had, and we were lashing out at the only other person who understood the depth of the pain. Kyle was the pragmatist, fearing the chaos of the truth. I was the moralist, raging against the injustice of the lie. We yelled, we cried, we said things we would later regret. He accused me of being the one who opened this Pandora's box, and he wasn't wrong. I accused him of cowardice. For a moment, standing in that living room, the chasm between us felt wider and deeper than it ever had before. And then, something broke. The anger subsided, leaving behind a raw, exhausted despair. Kyle slumped forward, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I hadn't seen my brother cry since he was a little boy. The sight of it shattered the last of my rage. I went over and sat on the arm of his chair, putting a tentative hand on his back. He didn't shrug it off. We sat like that for a long time. Two kids in a dark, quiet house, clinging to each other in the aftermath of a disaster we hadn't seen coming. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry I suggested it." He took a ragged breath. "Don't be," he said, his voice muffled by his hands. "You were right. We had to know. Ignorance wasn't bliss. It was just ignorance." The dynamic between us had irrevocably shifted. He was no longer the older brother who had it all figured out, and I was no longer the little sister living in his shadow. We were equals now, united by a shared trauma. We talked for the rest of the night. Long after the moon had traced its path across the sky, we talked about our childhood, about the good memories, as if to reassure ourselves that they had been real. We talked about our parents as people, flawed and complicated, not just as mom and dad. We made a pact, there in the pale light of dawn. We wouldn't say anything yet. We would wait, we would observe, and we would decide, together, what to do. The secret was ours to carry. For now, it was a heavy burden, but we would carry it together. When our parents returned 2 days later, tanned and seemingly relaxed, the house felt like a movie set. We watched them, our new knowledge a pair of lenses through which we saw everything with painful clarity. The way mom's smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she hugged dad. The way she subtly pulled away from his touch. The way she checked her phone the second she walked in the door. A fleeting, hopeful look on her face before she schooled her features back into wifely contentment. Kyle and I exchanged a look across the room. A silent conversation passed between us. "We see it. We know." The following weeks were a masterclass in painful observation. We were hyper-aware of every interaction, every phone notification, every whispered conversation behind closed doors. The secret forged a new bond between Kyle and me. We developed our own silent language, a system of looks and subtle gestures to communicate our unease. We started spending more time together, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine need for the only other person who understood the tectonic plates shifting beneath our family. It was Kyle who finally broke the stalemate. About a month later, he came into my room one night, his face grim. "I can't do this anymore, Chloe. I can't watch him be so blind. It's killing me." I knew exactly what he meant. Dad, in his innocent, trusting way, was the most heartbreaking part of it all. He was trying so hard, buying her flowers for no reason, suggesting date nights, completely unaware that the woman he was trying to reconnect with was already emotionally 1,000 miles away. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I'm not going to tell him," Kyle said, "but I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to give her a chance to come clean." The confrontation happened the next day, while Dad was at work. Kyle asked me to be there, for moral support. We sat Mom down in the living room, the same room where our world had fractured. Her demeanor was immediately defensive. "What is this? An intervention?" she asked, trying to sound light but missing by a mile. "Mom," Kyle began, his voice steady but low. "We know about Mark." The color drained from her face. She looked from Kyle to me and back again, her expression a frantic scramble from denial to fear to a sickening shame. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "We went through your phone the night you and Dad were away," I said, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. "We saw everything." The fight went out of her then. She deflated, sinking into the couch cushions as if her bones had turned to liquid. She didn't try to explain or justify. She just cried, deep, racking sobs that were awful to witness. She was our mother, and she was broken, and she was the one who had broken us. She begged us not to tell our dad. She promised she would end it. She said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that she loved our father, that she loved us. It was a torrent of excuses and pleas, and none of it made the betrayal hurt any less. Kyle was stoic. "You have 1 week," he told her, his voice like ice. 1 week to tell him the truth. "If you don't, we will." It was the hardest week of our lives. The tension in the house was a living thing, suffocating and dense. Mom was a ghost, pale and jumpy. Dad, sensing something was terribly wrong but misreading the source, became more attentive, more concerned, which only made the knife of her betrayal twist deeper. She told him on a Sunday night. Kyle and I left the house, unable to bear witness to the destruction. We drove to a diner and sat in a vinyl booth, pushing greasy fries around our plates, not speaking, just waiting for the text that would signal the end of our family as we knew it. It came from Dad. "Come home. We need to talk." The conversation that followed was brutal. There were tears, there was yelling, there was a raw, unfiltered pain in my father's face that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. He looked like a man who had been physically struck. He kept asking why, and Mom had no real answer. Just more tears and apologies that sounded hollow in the face of such devastation. My parents separated. The divorce proceedings were long and ugly. a drawn-out legal dissection of a 23-year marriage. The house was sold. Our family was officially, irrevocably, broken. In the years that have passed, the sharp edges of that pain have dulled, but the scars remain. My relationship with my mother is strained, a careful, polite dance around the enormous crater of her infidelity. My father eventually rebuilt his life, a process that was painful to watch but ultimately left him a stronger, if sadder, man. But the most enduring legacy of that night, the night I was home alone with my brother and suggested we look through our mom's phone, was the bond it created between Kyle and me.